Live, more or less, from Las Vegas. With Mark Anthony, I'm Rick Rosen, and this is Good Sports. What's happening, Mark?
Not much. How about you, bub?
I'm doing all right. I hear you're having a pain in the back.
Yeah, and it's not the wife.
So, some people have a lower opinion. So I'm just saying.
This whole,
Um,
this whole getting old thing sucks. Okay, it just sucks,
well,
and not in a good
you know
way.
what sucks worse is not getting older. You
Okay,
have to keep these things in mind.
perspective.
So anyhow, I have some questions for you, some procedural questions.
Okay.
And I know you're an expert on some of these things.
Yeah, thank you.
And it's a question that's been asked before, Mark. Does size really matter? Does it matter between 9 inches and 10 inches? Let's put it that way. Let's be more specific. What do you think? What's your opinion?
Okay.
Spit it out.
Okay. This is not personal, but it's not what you have, it's what you do with what you have is how it's been explained to me.
You know, I think that is so appropriate in this instance. And here's the deal. There are 3 quarterbacks, college quarterbacks, that are potential first-round draft picks. And when you pick a quarterback with your first-round draft pick, you are really putting a lot of eggs in one basket. And there's two different schools of thought on how to get a quarterback. You either draft one with your first-round draft pick that you know is a surefire, this guy's going to do it, John Elway, Peyton Manning, on and on and on. There's several of those. There are none in this year's draft. They're hoping to get a Tom Brady, a guy who wasn't all that highly thought of. They could have got. The Patriots did get in the 6th round, and because there's none of these guys that look like immediate come in and change the franchise starters. They are, in no particular order, Jared Goff out of California, Paxton Lynch out of Memphis, and Carson Wentz out of North Dakota State. Now, obviously, each one of them has some physical attributes that are good and some stats and those kind of things. Where you play has a lot to do with it. North Dakota frickin' State is not mainstream football, and so the opposition has not been. But Carson Wentz looks like the real deal. Physically, he's got everything you could ask for, including at least 10-inch hands. They're saying he has very big hands. And that's Elway has like 10 and an eighth, 10 and a half, somewhere in there, inch hands. And they say that it doesn't really affect throwing the ball except in inclement weather, except in bad weather. Well, the guy from North Dakota State, okay, then you do have some data there that you might want to use in deciding whether you take him in the first round. Because if you take a quarterback in the first round, you're bound to determine you're going to at least play him. He's going to have some role in your future out there on the field. If you take him in the 4th round and you check him out in practice and God forbid the first 2 guys in front of him go down or something like that, you've got a chance to see this guy in action without having him from the start of your season and have everything riding on him. So these 3 guys, Jared Goff, who from Cal, is a tremendous quarterback. He has 9-inch hands. And there's some real concern about whether his hands are too small to play in the NFL. Well, I guess if he goes to Miami or something like that, he's good. But it doesn't seem like like it's their issue. You think of guys like Doug Flutie. I mean, Elway's a big guy. You think of Cam Newton. That's a big man. And to be able to hold on to the ball. But Cam Newton at 6'5", however the frick big his hands are, he wasn't the modicum of ball control in the Super Bowl against the Broncos. So anyway, Jared Goff, California, 9-inch hands. Paxton Lynch from Memphis, 10-inch hands. Carson Wentz from North Dakota State, 10-inch hands. Teddy Bridgewater from your Vikings only has 9.25-inch hands, and they say that could have cost him some standing in the draft when he went a few years back because his hands were smaller than normal. But anyway, what do you think? Which is now that you know what the hell we're talking about. What do you think?
Okay, so now if the quarterback has smaller hands, do we take more air out of the ball?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable question. Why aren't they allowed to adjust the damned air in the ball? If it makes for a better ball game, and if the guy's got smaller hands, okay. I mean, you hear on the broadcast, Mark, that they say both offensive players and defensive players have the rights to the ball when it's in the air. Okay. Well, most of the guys play on defense are playing out there because they don't have really good hands. If they had great hands, they'd be on offense. Most of them, or at least some of them, a good portion. So anyhow, if it makes the ball easier to catch, it probably aids the defense at least as much as it does the offense. If it makes it easier to throw, okay, then there's, then you just use the same sides. That's all. If you think the other guys are cheating and you get the object they're cheating with, it's like here. If you were at a craps table and the guy next to you was cheating and they passed the dice when they came to you, would you say, no, I don't want the cheaty ones. I want the good ones.
Yes.
Nobody does that. What he's doing, I know what numbers are going to come up. Give me the loaded dice. I want to throw them. And so with the ball, if you're going to give separate balls, let the teams have control of their separate balls. It's like the tires in NASCAR, which is coming here in a week and a half. Okay, put however much air pressure you're comfortable with and go with it. And the other guys can have this range of air that you can put in the ball. NASCAR, football, NFL has done every damn thing they can except put tutus on the quarterback to help the offense.
Do not give them any ideas.
To make for more scoring. But
do not give them any more ideas.
But what I'm saying is, isn't it a strange place to draw the line at air pressure in the balls? If it makes for a better game, why would you be against that? Just for an arbitrary figure of 12 pounds or 11 and a half pounds or whatever it is that the balls are set at, and it's somewhere in that range, Mark. If you knew that you could have a better product on the field by simply letting the teams adjust that to the quarterback's liking, I do not see any team. If you think they're cheating because they've got it at 8 pounds of air pressure instead of 12, use the same frickin' ball. That's all they'd have to do. It's very common sense, but uncommon. And I'm not a big fan of Roger Goodell's anyway. And it's too bad I have the explanation for Deflategate, don't you?
Okay.
You want to hear it?
Yeah, go for it. Come on.
Roger Goodell's name is on every single football. And he sucks, and that explains the loss of air inside the footballs. So I think it's valuable, and I think it's as good an explanation as there is. Okay, speaking of quarterbacks, who may or may not suck, particularly next year, Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler are the two quarterbacks, much like Joe Montana, and the Broncos nation hopes Steve Young when they were at San Francisco. Montana won the Super Bowl and did this and did all that. He was towards the end of the line, and it was either get rid of him or get rid of Steve Young. Steve Young was a starter in the USFL. He came over, ended up with the Niners, and sat behind Joe Montana very patiently. Wasn't a pain in the ass. Didn't cause nonsense in the clubhouse. Although there was always some. Every loss. Somebody looks at, well, I think the second string quarterback could have done better. He's usually the most popular guy on the team, especially with the fans, is the second string quarterback. So anyway, the Broncos are at the point now where Brock Osweiler has exhausted his rookie contract, and this is when these guys cash the big ticket. Well, he hasn't played much. He played part of this season, and then Manning came back in actually at halftime of a game, the second half, and took over and won. It eventually turned into the Super Bowl victory with Manning at the helm. There's a lot of conjecture whether Peyton Manning, who sat out because of injuries and whatever, and has had the neck surgery and all that, Mark, in the past, is now able to have a whole nother season of good health, which he didn't have even this year or the past few years. I don't think there's any indication that says, well, as a guy gets older, he's going to get healthier. In a sport like the NFL, it doesn't happen in contact sports. So I I think there's a real possibility that Peyton Manning has played his last game as a Denver Bronco. I certainly hope, and I think a lot of people do, that Peyton Manning has played his last game in the NFL. He doesn't need it. He's got records up the yazoo. They can name pizzas after all his records, and I'm telling you, he's the only guy with 200 victories. He passed Brett Favre by winning the Super Bowl. He's the only guy with 200. It's like Richard Petty. That is a magical figure in sports, in these types of things. 200 victories, and your last one was the Super Bowl. Elway is famous for Elwaying out. He rode off. He won the Super Bowl and said, "See ya, adios. I'm gonna own the team, and I got car dealerships, and I'm going to Disneyland." And that's what John Elway did. And Peyton Manning has that opportunity now. One of the things, and I don't think it's as much about Peyton Manning and Brock Osweiler, because what's one more year in the situation that they have now? Knowing that Manning's not going to be he's certainly not going to go past this year. So even if Manning says, "I want to play one more year," this is it. And Osweiler sits and waits for the inevitable to happen to Manning, which is that he gets hurt or something, or he's ineffective. He was ineffective this last year for most of it, nagging injuries and those kind of things. So anyhow, Manning and Osweiler, they know it's the last year for Manning. Osweiler, they've got to keep him around or lose him for basically nothing, as he would be a free agent. And so I think the Broncos are going to hope that Manning sees the light and he retires. That would make it simple. He retires. They keep Osweiler. They have the money to sign him, what they say, for Manning not being around. And they all live happily ever after. Now, whether Brock Osweiler is a guy that can play in the NFL and lead a team from start to finish and get them in the at least the quarterback hunt every year, as the Broncos now are used to, that remains to be seen. He did a fair job when he was in this year, but he certainly didn't set the world on fire. He didn't come in and just say, "Oh my God, there he is. That's the guy," Beethoven. So nobody does that. Anyhow, that's the NFL. The draft is coming up, Mark. The big news, obviously, around the league is that there's also some other concerns with quarterbacks. Johnny Manziel, they've turned his domestic violence case over to a grand jury. And as the saying goes, and I'm sure you've heard this before, if a district attorney wants to indict you through the grand jury process, they can indict a ham sandwich.
Yeah.
Now, having the trial, whatever, but in the culture that we're in right now, an indictment is almost as good media-wise as a conviction. The indictment's front page news. The plea agreement or the facts of the case don't always add up to what the excitement of the indictment. So sometimes it's not front page news; it's third page, sports page news. So anyhow, Johnny Manziel's going through some stuff, man. I mean, it's not. I'm certain it's not fun for him, and it's not fun for the people that love him or the people that the clingers on and the roadies and the what I'm talking about, that group right, that's expecting to cash in off of his coattails and those kind of things. And there's the money rub and the this and the that and that persona. On the other hand, Johnny Manziel is a human being, and I do hope that he's all right and he's a productive member of society. But I've never been overly convinced, Mark, that he was an NFL quarterback that could do like what we talked about. Brock Osweiler is going to need to do to get your team to be a contender year in and year out. There are some things that are beyond your control. Injuries is one of them. And so if your team's beat up and banged up and you don't have your front liners out there, okay, then there's an excuse for a year or so. But you have to make progress, and that progress has to be, a lot of teams make the playoffs. It used to not be that way. So you have to be in that next level is mid-level by just making the playoffs. Then there's the elite teams, Patriots, Broncos, in the NFL. I mean, in the NFC, would you think maybe the Giants and the Cowboys, at least it's expected of them every year. And if they don't do it, it's a downer. And there's some turnover. There's some, we've got to get back there quickly. Manziel went to a the Cleveland Browns fans would give anything just for a frickin' playoff game, much less you have to win it. Just get us there. and he couldn't do that. So I don't know. Even if he has no drug issues, no violence issues, no whatever issues, legal, blah 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 blah. Even if he was perfectly okay that way, I'm not certain that he's an NFL player. He was a great college player as equate to NFL. Speaking of people that are productive.
Yes.
Somewhere, Mark, in one of these notebooks, I have something about A-Rod that is absolutely amazing. And I tried finding it beforehand and I couldn't. Well, all right. Anyway, A-Rod is now 40 years of age. Last year, he led the Yankees in 4 offensive categories: on base percentage. It wasn't home runs. He had 33 home runs, on base percentage, on and on. And I had 4 stats at 39 or 40. I think he turned 40 in mid-season around the All-Star break. He led them in 4 categories. That's pretty good. And I don't care if you're the worst team in Major League Baseball, those on your roster are pretty damn good baseball players. And so the Yankees were contenders. They were in the thick of it, and they would not have been without A-Rod. People say A-Rod's career is tainted by steroids. Whether it is or isn't is kind of open to conjecture. But if you say, well, the guy wouldn't have hit near as many home runs or had been near as productive. Okay, here's the argument for A-Rod, and this is going to royal up the Hall of Fame thing. If you take just half of A-Rod's totals in home runs, in batting average, all those types of things that you measure offensive production, if you say, let's cut it in half, let's only give him credit for 50% of what he did. As of mid-season last year, half of A-Rod stats were better than than anything past the top 100 in the Hall of Fame. Half of his stats were better than all but the top 100 that are in the Hall. And I think that speaks for itself. So A-Rod is the guy that's going to, he's not the media darling. He came in. Derek Jeter was the star. A-Rod in, and the $25 million a year contract at the time was just it was mind boggling. Now it's what second baseman get, but at the time it was that incredible amount of money to play a game, and he was never the media darling. And again, he and Derek Jeter played the same position, and they had to make some accommodations that way. And it always seemed to be Jeter was the guy, and they had a falling out socially. It was a dating thing, and they were both hot young stars of the Yankees, and it was not going to be the perfect fit, and regardless, and it wasn't. And A-Rod, has never been the most popular guy to talk to, and he went with Madonna and whoever else, and he was this guy's our arm candy, or this babe's arm candy, or whatever it was. So anyhow, when it comes time for the Hall of Fame voting, it's going to be interesting to see how A-Rod is treated when you think of half of his stats would have got a whole bunch of people in to the Hall of Fame. If you discount half of his stats, and I don't think you can. I think what he's done these last couple of years, say, okay, instead of the ball clearing the fence by 20 feet, when he was on steroids, it cleared the fence by 50 feet. Okay, it cleared the frickin' fence. It was going to do that anyway. I think it was somewhat superfluous of him to take them, but anyway, that's the story. Baseball coming up, Mark. We're going to have the big league weekend here in Las Vegas, and we have the Cubs and the Mets, 2 of the 4 semifinalists for the in Major League Baseball last year. 2 of the Cubs are the pretty decent favorites to win it all, and we're talking about the Chicago Cubs, not the flew in from Mars Cubs. These are the Chicago Cubs that are favored, and that's been a hell of a long time since you said that in the same sentence. And in the Mets, with us, with Las Vegas 51s being the farm team of the Mets, we see these kids as they're going up, and you look at that pitching staff and you say, yeah, former Las Vegas 51's an awful lot. And you look at the Cubs, they have Chris Bryant, who played high school ball here. He certainly is a unique baseball player. His size and his agility, and he's at first base, which is a good place to be for longevity and those types of things, Mark. And Chris Bryant is certainly a player that you can build that team around. And they've got pitching now, and they've got this, and they've got that, and they've got Joe Madden as manager, and they've got excitement, and they've got these things. And oh my God, I don't know if I'm really going to hear myself say this, but the Cubs may very well win the World Series this year.
No, don't.
If they don't, it may be the Mets that keeps them from doing it, and they're both going to be here for Big League Weekend here in a couple weeks. So, if you want to go see Major League Baseball, you want to go see the precursor to the playoffs, go watch the Cubs and the Mets play. And it's always beautiful weather here at Cashman Field. We may not have Cashman Field as a baseball venue much longer. Some always some problems there. We moved out here in 1983. That was the first year they played baseball at Cashman Field, Mark. And it was kind of state of the art then. It's been a while since 1983 came and went. So that's all. Times change, and it's a tough sell. Don Logan and his entire staff, and Jim, our buddy, the PR director there, do such a wonderful job with always fighting that they're not in the middle of the strip, like the new arena is going to be for the hockey team if and when we get one. I'm not certain we're going. They're in the middle of the strip. It's different to be 4 or 5 blocks from downtown. Even if they were downtown with Cashman Field, it would be different. But they're not. There's no casino carryover. There's not a hell of a lot of taxis and limos and stuff going back and forth. So they have to do it the old-fashioned way. They have to win, and they have to put a good product out there, and they have to give you your money's worth. And they do that. And if you ever want to have a fun time, cheap date night in Vegas, man, go on Thursday nights to the 51's baseball game, and it's $1 beer night.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. You can. You get to go watch basically as close to Major League Baseball as we're going to see for a long time, and you get to have a nice buzz. So see a good game. It's nice at night. It's Thursday nights. 51's baseball. Okay, NASCAR, Mark.
NASCAR.
This weekend and one more, and then that starts next week. Thursday is a free day out there if you're a fan. And I know I've talked to some people that were downtown, Mark, for the Champions Week, and that's how they see their drivers. There's a couple of them told me we're trying to win tickets on the radio show because we can't afford to go, and it's a pricey ticket. It's not just a $20 bill to get in, and so it's some people can afford it and some people can't, and so they're having a free day on Thursday. The big guns are going to be out there. The guys are going to be driving. I'm sure there'll be some autograph places and stuff like that. There are plenty of places that are hosts to autograph sessions for different drivers or whatever. I know the Palms does. I know Samstown does every year. I believe the Gold Coast does also, and South Point, obviously Brendan Gaughan does his thing there for his dad Michael, the owner of the South Point. And so all around town, we're very fortunate. Everybody likes to come here. The sponsors like to come here. Most everybody's. And so it's a big stop for them, and there's a lot of business to be done, a lot of those things. One of the things I will tell you, Mark, Dr. Dean Sicking is going to be in town over race weekend.
Cool.
And this is the man that invented the safer barrier, and he saved, I don't know if you watched the Daytona 500, he saved Matt DiBenedetto and Chris Buescher's lives, I believe, Mark. They both slammed into the wall just about as hard as you can hit a wall, and just totally destroyed one of the cars. Just pushed the right front back to the right front wheel was up against the firewall, and that's and when I was talking to Dr. Sicking about it, he hadn't seen the wreck yet, and I said they mashed part of that car back to the firewall, and he said that had to be an incredibly hard hit into the safer barrier to do that kind of damage to the front of a car, which is not just like it's not like the cars you see around out on the street. they're as structurally sound up front as about as they possibly can be. And so they're pretty well reinforced up there. And when you see that kind of damage, and you see these guys take down the nets, and they had to sit there for a couple of minutes and make sure their breathing was still working right, and I'm sure they had to unpucker off the seats. It can't be fun to see that wall coming up that quick right in front of you, and just hit, I mean, right on the curve. I think it was between 1 and 2, Mark, and they just had that terrible angle. Both of them hit it, and they skidded to a stop, and the emergency vehicles came up, and as NASCAR does a tremendous job with their safety features, everything worked. And the safety guys got down and next to him and squatted down a little bit and was talking to him in the driver's windows. And sure enough, they got out of the cars on their own and walked over to the ambulances on their own and went to the in-care care center. And I had to call Dr. Sicking and tell him congratulations, that his, that's whenever I've talked to him, his entire motivation is saving lives. Mm-hmm. And I told him the names of the two you saved today were Mandy Benedetto and Chris Buescher. And that I believe that's exactly what happened, Mark. I don't think it was any less of an impact than what Dale Earnhardt died from, at Daytona at that track. What is it, 15 years ago? Man.
Yeah.
Anyhow, that Dr. Sicking's going to be here. And I think it's going to be I'm interested. I want to get a picture of him and DiBenedetto and Buescher together and just say, okay, here's the reason you're able to drive in Las Vegas this week. His name's Dr. D.
This is the man.
We're gonna have fun out there, and some tremendous races. I just watched the truck race from Daytona. I had it taped, and there was the big one. It was a big wreck, and it was great racing. And you're thinking of all these guys, the excitement that the truck series now generates, and NASCAR has their minor leagues in there. They have what used to be the Southwest Tour and the Northwest Tour, and I'm not certain of the names of them now, Mark. They're not, but anyway, they have their minor leagues, and these guys make it up pretty quick. And you see these kids 18, 19 years old, and they're raring to go. I mean, my goodness, Chase Elliott sat on the pole, the guy that replaced Jeff Gordon. Jeff Gordon was on the pole at Daytona last year. Chase Elliott was on the pole in the 24 this year. It's that you might as well have had Jeff Gordon holding him up to the sun, like in the Lion King, and passing it on that way. And Elliott wrecked out. But nonetheless, he got that number 24 on the pole and gave put a lot of air and a lot of sails of Jeff Gordon fans who were having some divorce feelings or whatever it is, some loss, sense of loss there with Gordon retiring. Tony Stewart retiring from NASCAR, Mark, broke his back. Didn't get to race in Daytona. Race he's never won. Probably the best driver to have ever raced there and not have won at a Daytona 500, at least a guy that had a chance to win the Daytona 500 by racing stock cars there, NASCAR. You'd be hard-pressed. I don't think he's going to be healthy enough to race here. He went off just over a dune in a dune buggy and buried the nose. And it broke. He has what they call a burst fracture in the lower part of his back, by his lumbar, by his tailbone. And he was out there with Jeff Gordon and Greg Biffle and Ray Evernham and some pretty big names. And they waited around for a while and said, "Where's Tony?" And they finally went looking for him, and he was over this dune and laying there and had a broken back. And so they got him to the hospital, and that was cool. But he had to miss his final Daytona 500. And so it's been a tumultuous last couple years for Tony.
Yeah.
And now finally something with Stewart-Haas Racing that didn't really hurt. At least that part of Tony Stewart is that they're switching from Chevys to Fords. They had been, Kevin Harvick won the championship for them in a Chevy. And Danica Patrick drove Chevys, and all the big brouhaha that she brought to NASCAR, and all those types of things happen in Chevys. Now they're going to Fords in 2017, and Clint Boyer going over, and you're talking about Boyer and Bush and Danica Patrick and Kevin Harvick, and they're all that transition to a brand new manufacturer or whatever. I don't think it's good. I don't think it portends good things for them next year. The year after, once they get it all sorted out, because some guys are good at putting together Chevys and knowing what makes them work, and in this little bit and that little bit. Guys that have been already working on Fords and have that as their point of reference, I think, are going to be ahead of the game with these guys. So it's going to be a tough transition, but they'll get it done.
Yeah, but there's really not. I mean, aren't they using? Don't all cars have the same body and the same engine? You know,
No,
I mean, it's just a nameplate.
They're very, very similar.
No,
yeah, but there are some technical differences, Mark. And the chassis, you can put a Roush chassis in a Chevy under a Chevy body, and and those kind of things. You want everything to work. It's like when you put your stereo system together. You want your speakers and your amp to be the same as your turntable and your you want everything to be the same. When you start mixing parts, you're not getting the best out of something because they were meant to work together. And that's how these mechanics are. They know what little tweaks it makes to make this particular. You see how technical they are on a quarter of a pound or an eighth of a pound air pressure. They know what difference that little bit of a tweak makes that car do. So that also works for the mechanics and all those people that are involved in those cars. Is they know that twisting this nut on this Chevy to this amount of force they have no frickin' idea what that same twist to the same force does to a Ford. So they have stuff they have to learn. And some teams are going to be okay in sharing some information with them, but keep in mind they're all wanting to win. And so they're only going to help you so much. Hey, welcome to Ford, and it's nice to have you, and here's about 80% of what we know. And they're not ever going to give them 100. I think it's going to be, I think it's, it looked like they had things going their way. I mean, they had access to Hendrick motors. They certainly had Hendrick help. Chevy was, a very, very dominant kind of thing. You look at Jimmy Johnson's 6 championships. They were all in a Chevy. Kevin Harvick was in a Chevy. A lot of guys, and so for them to make that transition over to Ford, I don't know whether it's money or what exactly it is, but now they're going to go to Yates Racing rather than through Hendrick Motorsports, and I think it's going to be a learning curve for them. So, but anyway, I guess we'll ask them. Are you going to go to the races?
Yeah.
Are you going to be? Or do you need a walker or something, or are you going to be okay?
Oh, me, I got good drugs.
I got sitting in the media room. Yeah. You and Bill Cosby. Okay.
I got good drugs. We're good. Yes.
Yeah. Oh, Jello. Well. All right. I thought it was funny, Mark, about the.
Well, I'm trying to see here. They don't seem to have a hauler parade this year.
Yeah, and there's only so many times they want to listen. They don't like stopping traffic on the strip for a mass shooting that was run into by a truck full of nuns that caught fire. And, they really don't like stopping traffic on the strip, and that's what the hauler parade does. And I don't think people watch the hauler parade then go into the Mandalay Bay or the MGM Grand or Caesar's Palace or and on and on and on. They go home, or they go back to their trailers, or they go out to the speedway and start drinking and partying and doing what fans do. I don't think going into a casino is part of that deal. So when Shania Twain rode that way, wasn't that her that came down on the horse? I just think, I just think it's probably not great business. I don't know that I think downtown probably gets as much benefit from the race as the strip does. which is a rare occurrence, Mark. I
Okay.
think it's much more of a downtown kind of, and because of the much closer proximity to the speedway from downtown than it is from the strip. Not that it's that far, but it's far enough to there's a difference. It just seems more of a downtown crowd, Mark. Don't you get that sense when we're doing Champions Week and the red carpet is downtown? I see people I know down there on the strip. You're like, okay, where in Wisconsin are you from? Where in okay, downtown it's where do you live? I live right over there. Out behind the 7-Eleven down by the casino. Yeah, okay. So I think there's a little bit of a difference.
Family, so
okay.
all right.
The big fights and everything. The UFC had their fight night scheduled. Conor McGregor, who has said some nasty things about Las Vegas. At least some of them have been taken as nasty things. I think he was just being honest. He doesn't like fighting here. He'd much rather, he's the champion. He's the big draw. He has some cards in his hand. And he'd much rather fight closer to Ireland so all his Irish fans, them that follow him around the world to his fights, don't have to travel so far. You're kind of tired of coming to Las Vegas. And I guess, or he is, but whatever, he doesn't want to fight here all the time, which he has been. So Dos Anjos tore up something. I forget even what he hurt, Mark. He broke something like his arm or his wrist or something. And anyway, backed out of the fight. And so Nick Diaz has stepped in, and it ought to be interesting. They're both nasty guys. I mean, it's tough not to be a UFC fighter and not have some real streak of nastiness in your makeup. And so it's going to be an entertaining fight, but it's not going to be Dos Anjos and McGregor. And it might be the last time that we see McGregor fight here in Las Vegas for quite some time. Years, I would think. If he fights 2 times, 3 times in a year, that's quite a bit of wear and tear on your body.
Yeah.
I'm telling you right now, you just go behind 7-Eleven, go outside of a bar and get in 3 fights in a year and see if that's probably going to last you. I don't know that you want to do that. And all the prep and all that stuff. So, the guy's got millions of bucks now. He'd like to enjoy it. I never begrudge anybody that. I don't like it when people say, well, he's an athlete. He shouldn't be here. Hell, he should be here every night. Until unless it's the night before the game or something, enjoy it. You made it. You never know when it's going to stop. And I guess, Mark, we can't miss in not talking about the NBA. 25 or so games left, All-Star break. Stephen Curry last year, somewhat of a surprise to win the NBA championship, and certainly showed their mettle in knocking off Cleveland, even though Cleveland didn't have Kyrie Irving, and guys were hurt, and Fedova played. LeBron James really did everything you could expect of anybody and gave them all they wanted, but they won the championship. Now this year, they are certainly threatening to set the all-time win record in the NBA, eclipsing Michael Jordan's Bulls. And they're on track to win 74 or 75 games. It's 74 point something, or a little under 75 games this year, out of an 82 game season. And they have yet to lose back-to-back games. They're winning at home. They're winning on the road. And the team that nobody's really paying much attention to is the Spurs, who are also on track to win 70 plus games. And it would be very unprecedented in the NBA. I don't believe that's ever happened, Mark, that you have 2 teams that win 70 games. The Spurs are a phenomenal team. They're as team gets. I think it would be whenever that, it's unfortunate they're both in the West because you would never see them in the NBA Finals. But I think that the time that they're going to meet in the playoffs is going to be a very, very interesting part of the NBA season, and I look forward to it. But I think the only team that has a chance of knocking off the Warriors, if they stay healthy, is the San Antonio Spurs. I don't think anybody else has the depth to do it, and they just seem like on this collision course. And I don't know who's gonna. I think You would be. I would not put all my money on Golden State, but my goodness, what a fun team to watch. Steph Curry already set the record, or just set a record last night for most consecutive games with a 3-pointer, and he's at 128 games. Shit, he's hitting shots from half court. He hits it. He's sitting on the bench, and the ball bounces to him, and he flips it up with his leg. And I mean, the guy's just phenomenal in what he's doing. I think they're. It's unfortunate for the Spurs. They have won many championships. The Warriors have won one, and so I think the Spurs kind of like that toiling in anonymity down there in San Antonio. They're the only game in town. There's no San Antonio NHL. There's no San Antonio Major League Baseball. Certainly no San Antonio NFL. There's the San Antonio Spurs, and Greg Popovich, the man of few words when it comes to interviews and those kind of things. They have one of the greatest players ever in Tim Duncan. They have the foreigners, Manu Ginobili and Tony Parker, and then they got Kawhi Leonard, the kid coming from Missouri, and now's the MVP and defensive whiz and all that. And so the Spurs are a wonderful team. We're coming down to the playoffs. What's right around the corner, Mark, is Augusta and the Masters tournament down there. And Tiger Woods is still having back problems and this and that. And I don't know, man. Golf, no matter how good the guys are that are playing it, they just don't have that personality that I see out there like Tiger Woods. So, I might watch the last round, but do you know anybody? Do you know anything about the golfers? Can you name the number one golfer in the world? Hello, Mark. Okay. Obviously, we're having some type of technical difficulties. So, all right, Mark. Well, I guess it must mean it's time to say goodbye, huh? I've had the silent treatment before. Well, for all of us here at Good Sports, and that includes all you listeners too, we do appreciate you guys very much, and those that catch us on the archives, and drop us a line if there's something we haven't covered that you want us to talk about. We'll be more than happy to do so. So again, for all of us here at Good Sports, we thank you for listening and watching, and we will talk to you again next week right here on Good Sports. For Mark Anthony, I'm Rick Rosen. Bye-bye.